The shuttle hit the ice field at 300 kilometers per hour, and Owen Reeves spent the next 17 seconds convinced he was going to die. Metal screamed against frozen rock. The instrument panel exploded in a shower of sparks. His harness cut into his chest hard enough to crack ribs. Then everything stopped, and the only sound was his own ragged breathing in the sudden silence. Owen hung upside down for a moment, taking inventory. Both legs worked, arms functional, head pounding, but no blood in his eyes. He hit the harness release and dropped onto what used to be the ceiling, landing in a heap among scattered equipment. Outside the cracked viewport, the ice planet TR-9 stretched away in endless white nothing. 48 hours. That was all he had before the retrieval ship left orbit. His contract with Terran Expansion Services was clear about that. Missed the window, and you stayed wherever you got stuck. The company didn't do rescue missions for mid-level contractors. Owen grabbed his emergency pack and kicked open the damaged airlock. The cold hit him like a physical blow, even through his environmental suit. -60 degrees, the readout said. Could be worse. Could be -100. The mining facility squatted on the horizon like a diseased tooth, all rust-colored metal and broken windows. Getting there would take 2 hours on foot. Owen checked his oxygen reserves and started walking. The facility was worse up close. Doors hung off hinges. Equipment lay scattered and frozen where someone had abandoned it in a hurry. Owen's job was simple on paper. Get in, find the data core in the main server room, get out. The company wanted records from this place before they wrote it off completely as a loss. He'd done a dozen extraction runs just like this one that he found the server room on the second level, but the door was blocked by a collapsed section of wall. Owen was calculating the best way through when he heard it. A sound like broken glass being dragged across metal. Soft and desperate and completely wrong for an abandoned facility. Protocol said ignore it. Protocol said stick to the mission. Protocol had kept Owen alive and employed for 6 years that he followed the sound anyway. The room he found was small and dark, filled with equipment he didn't recognize. Not mining gear. Something else. Laboratory equipment, maybe, or medical. Hard to tell with everything smashed. The sound came from the corner where twisted metal pinned something small and moving. Owen pulled out his work light and aimed it at the corner. 2 eyes reflected back, huge and terrified. They belonged to a creature about the size of a cat, covered in scales that caught the light like crystal. It had wings folded tight against its body and a long tail trapped under a fallen support beam. A dragon. An actual living dragon on an ice planet in the middle of nowhere. The creature made that sound again, glass on metal, and Owen realized it was crying that he should leave. He should turn around and find another route to the server room and complete his mission and catch his ride home. That was the smart play. That was what protocol demanded. That was what 6 years of careful corporate employment had taught him. Owen set down his pack and started moving debris. The support beam weighed more than he did. He had to jury rig a lever from broken pipes and use his entire body weight to shift it. 15 minutes of work. 15 minutes of his 48-hour window gone for a creature that might attack him the second it got free. The beam moved. The dragon scrambled backward, wings spreading in panic. Then it stopped. Those huge eyes fixed on Owen, and he felt something touch his mind. Not words. Not exactly. More like a feeling pressed directly into his thoughts. Terror, pain, gratitude, and then images. Other dragons, dozens of them, trapped in darkness somewhere below. Dying, waiting. The dragon limped forward on 3 legs, one front leg held carefully off the ground. It looked up at Owen and made a soft trilling sound. A question maybe, or a request. Owen checked his mission timer. 46 hours left. Enough time to get the data core and make the extraction if he moved fast. Enough time to do what he came here to do and go home and collect his pay and forget any of this happened. The dragon tilted its head, waiting. Owen thought about the data core sitting in the server room. He thought about his bank account and his contract renewal and the apartment waiting for him back on Earth. He thought about every safe and sensible choice that had brought him this far. Then he thought about dozens of dragons dying alone in the dark. The decision felt strange. Final. like stepping off a cliff and not knowing if anything waited below to catch him. Owen picked up his pack and followed the small dragon toward a stairwell that descended into darkness. Behind him, the server room and his mission and his entire carefully planned life waited, forgotten. The dragon's scales began to glow softly, lighting their way down. Owen didn't know where they were going or what he would find. He only knew that some choices couldn't be made by protocol. Some choices required you to be human first and an employee second. The stairs went down much farther than they should have. The architecture changed as they descended, becoming smoother and stranger. Not human work. Not human at all. Owen kept walking, following a small dragon into the unknown, abandoning everything he came for. And somehow, impossibly, it felt exactly right. The chamber at the bottom of the stairs stole Owen's breath, and not from exertion. It stretched away in every direction, easily the size of an aircraft hangar. Walls curved up into a domed ceiling covered in symbols that seemed to shift when he looked directly at them. Everything glowed with a faint blue light that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. But what filled the chamber made Owen's stomach turn. Pods. Hundreds of them. Clear cylinders arranged in perfect rows, each containing a dragon like the one limping beside him. Most lay motionless. Some twitched weakly. Several were clearly dead, their crystalline scales gone dull and gray. This wasn't a mining facility. It was a slaughterhouse. Owen moved to the nearest pod, hands shaking as he examined the interface. Corporate logos marked the equipment. Terran Expansion Services. His employer. The same company that sent him here to retrieve data was the same company harvesting these creatures. The small dragon pressed against his leg, making that glass-on-metal sound again. Louder now. More urgent. Owen found a control panel and started reading through the logs. His engineering background helped him make sense of the technical language, but he wished it didn't. The dragons were being kept in stasis, while pieces of them were carefully extracted. Scales for energy storage. Neural tissue for quantum computing interfaces. Blood for medical applications. Everything had a price tag attached. Most of the subjects showed fatal tissue damage. The extraction process was killing them slowly, but Owen's hands moved before his brain caught up, hitting release commands on the nearest pods. Alarms started blaring immediately. Red lights flashed across the chamber. A computerized voice announced unauthorized access and began counting down lockdown procedures 0.5 minutes until all exits sealed. The pods opened with hydraulic hisses. Dragons spilled out onto the smooth floor, most too weak to stand. A few managed to crawl away from their prisons. One didn't move at all. Owen ran down the rows, hitting every release he could reach. His small companion followed, making sounds that brought responses from the free dragons. They were communicating somehow, in ways Owen couldn't fully understand. 0.3 minutes. Most of the dragons were barely alive. Owen had nothing to treat them with. No medical supplies designed for alien biology. No way to keep them stable. He was going to save them only to watch them die anyway. The small dragon tugged at Owen's sleeve with surprising strength, pulling him toward a section of the chamber he hadn't noticed. More equipment. Different design. Owen recognized some of it from his engineering training. Environmental support systems. Life support. The basics were universal, even across species. 0.2 minutes. Owen worked faster than he'd ever worked in his life. He ripped components from one machine and wired them into another. He bypassed safety systems and overrode limiters and created connections that would make any proper engineer weep. Nothing he built was safe or tested or approved by any standard. But it worked. Oxygen started flowing through improvised lines. Temperature regulators kicked on. A jury-rigged grid of support systems spread across the chamber, connecting to the weakest dragons first. Owen watched readouts he barely understood, making adjustments based on nothing but instinct and desperation. 0.1 minute. The dragons began stabilizing. Color returned to dull scales. Breathing became more regular. It wouldn't keep them alive long, but it bought time. Maybe enough. 0.30 seconds. Owen heard heavy doors beginning to close. The facility was sealing itself. He was about to be trapped down here with no way out and 43 hours until his extraction window closed. His career was finished. His life might be too that he couldn't make himself care. The small dragon was watching him with those huge eyes. Owen met its gaze and felt that strange touch in his mind again. This time it wasn't just images. It was something deeper, older, a sense of recognition, like the dragon had been waiting for him specifically 0.10 seconds. The dragon's scales began to glow brighter. Owen felt warmth spreading through his chest, pleasant at first, then burning. He tried to step back, but his legs wouldn't move. The light intensified until the entire chamber blazed white. Images flooded Owen's mind. A planet of crystal spires and singing caves. Dragons flying in massive flocks, their scales creating patterns in the air. Not animals, not simple creatures. A civilization, ancient and beautiful and completely wiped out by human greed. He saw what the dragons called themselves. The Lumini, beings of light and connection, meant to bridge consciousness across the galaxy. He felt their purpose, their ancient role as living links between minds too different to understand each other. And he saw something else, a memory from long ago, a prophecy or prediction or hope. Someone would come, someone who fixed broken things, someone who chose compassion when profit demanded cruelty, someone exactly like Owen. The lockdown finished. The chamber sealed completely, and Owen collapsed as energy poured through him from the small dragon, changing him in ways he couldn't begin to understand. When he opened his eyes again, everything looked different. He could see the other dragons, not just with his eyes, but with something else. He felt their pain like echoes in his own body. He heard their thoughts like whispers at the edge of hearing. The small dragon stood over him, no longer quite so small. It had grown, scales brightening, wings spreading wide. And through their connection, Owen understood what had happened. They were bonded now, linked, two minds sharing one consciousness. The dragon had chosen him just as much as he had chosen to save it. And somewhere far away, something had noticed. Something vast and old had felt the bond form and was coming to investigate. Owen struggled to his feet, one hand on the dragon's neck for support. Around them, the freed Lumini watched with knowing eyes. His mission was forgotten. His extraction window didn't matter. His old life had ended the moment he freed that first dragon. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Owen woke 3 days later in a bed that felt like floating on warm air. His body ached in places he didn't know could ache. His head felt stuffed with cotton and lightning at the same time. When he tried to sit up, gentle pressure pushed him back down. The dragon rested beside the bed, now the size of a large dog. Its scales had deepened to a rich blue-violet that reminded Owen of deep ocean water. When it opened its eyes, Owen felt the connection between them pulse like a living thing. Pip. The name came to him without thinking, pulled from that glass-on-metal sound the dragon made. It felt right. Through their bond, Owen sensed Pip's relief at his waking, but also concern, worry, and underneath it all, a current of urgency that made Owen force himself upright despite the protests from every muscle. They weren't in the chamber anymore. This room was smaller, curved walls covered in those same shifting symbols. Through an archway, Owen could see stars. Not through a viewport, just stars, as if the wall had simply decided not to exist in that spot. A figure stood silhouetted against the starfield, tall and thin, with too many joints in its arms. When it turned, Owen saw a face that was almost human, but not quite. Eyes too large, skin that shifted between blue and green, depending on the angle. No hair at all. The figure spoke, and Owen's head filled with words that weren't spoken out loud. "You are awake." "Good. We have many questions." Owen tried to respond, but his throat was too dry. Pip moved closer, and suddenly Owen's thoughts flowed through their bond and out to the stranger. Basic communication. "Who are you? Where am I?" "I am called Varain. You are aboard an ascendancy vessel. We arrived at TR-9 in response to the Lumini distress signal. The signal your bonded sent when you freed the others." Owen processed this slowly. His brain still felt like it was working through mud. Ascendancy. The word carried weight in the thoughts Varain sent. Power. Age. Authority. You are human. Varane's mental voice carried something like disgust. Your species built that facility. Your species harvested the Lumini like crops. Why should we believe you are different? Owen didn't try to make excuses. He just opened his memories through the bond with Pip, letting Varane see everything. The crash. The choice to save one small dragon instead of completing his mission. The horror of discovering what his employer had done. The desperate improvisation to keep the dying Lumini alive. Varane watched in silence. When the memories ended, the alien's mental presence felt slightly warmer. Slightly less hostile. One human's kindness does not absolve your species of genocide. There were 400 Lumini in that facility. Only 93 survived. The others died while your corporations profited. Owen felt sick. Through Pip, he felt the grief of the other Lumini. Each death was a wound in their collective consciousness. The Lumini weren't just individuals. They were connected, networked, part of something larger than themselves. Every death diminished all of them. What will happen to me? Owen thought through Pip. That is being decided. You bonded with a Lumini child. Such bonds are sacred and irreversible. You can never return to what you were. Your neural structure has been fundamentally altered. You are connected to the Lumini network now, permanently. Pip pressed closer to Owen, and he felt the dragon's worry. Through their link, he understood the truth. If he died, Pip died. If Pip died, Owen's mind would shatter from the severed connection. They were bound together for life. The Ascendancy Council is debating humanity's fate. Varane's thoughts carried a weight of sorrow. You're not the first destructive species we have encountered. Usually we quarantine such civilizations until they mature or destroy themselves. But the Lumini complicate matters. How? Owen asked. The Lumini are essential to galactic civilization. They are living bridges between minds too different to comprehend each other. Without them, the ascendancy would collapse. Species would return to isolation, unable to truly communicate. They are too precious to risk, and your species nearly destroyed them for profit. Owen had no defense. Humanity had done exactly what Varane described. He knew it. Pip knew it. The whole network knew it. But Varane continued, your actions suggest humans are capable of better. You sacrificed everything to save creatures you had never seen before. You chose compassion over survival. That is rare. What happens now? You will be trained. You and your bonded will learn to fully utilize your connection. Then you will return to human space as an ambassador. You will be proof that humans can join the galactic community. If you succeed, humanity gets a chance. If you fail, the quarantine protocols activate. Your species will be isolated from the rest of the galaxy forever. Owen felt the weight of that responsibility settle onto his shoulders. The entire future of humanity resting on one failed contractor who couldn't even complete a simple data extraction. Pip made a soft sound, and warmth flowed through their bond. Not pressure, not demand, just support. We'll do it together. The dragon was right. Owen wasn't alone anymore. Whatever came next, they would face it as one. But as Varane led them through corridors of impossible architecture toward the training facilities, Owen felt something else through the Lumini network. A distant wrongness. A cold spot in the web of consciousness that connected the dragons across space. Something was out there in the dark between stars. Something that noticed when a network lit up with new connections. Something vast and hungry and patient. Through Pip, Owen caught a fragment of ancient memory. A name whispered in terror across millennia. The consuming silence that IT was coming. And according to the network's collective knowledge, it was coming for Earth. Humanity's radio broadcasts and expansion had made too much noise. They had attracted something that didn't just destroy civilizations. IT erased them completely, absorbed their consciousness, and left nothing behind but empty worlds and screaming silence. Owen had abandoned his mission to save one small dragon. Now he had to save his entire species from a threat they didn't even know existed. The training began immediately. 5 months passed before Owen truly understood what it meant to be connected to the Lumini network. Time aboard the Ascendancy vessels felt strange and fluid, measured not in days, but in lessons learned and barriers broken. Pip grew during those months, becoming more confident and capable. The dragon could now project thoughts clearly enough that other species understood without translation. Their bond had deepened until Owen sometimes forgot where his thoughts ended and Pip's began. The training was brutal. Not physically, though Owen's body adapted in ways that should have been impossible. The real difficulty was mental. Learning to communicate with minds that perceived reality in completely different ways. Owen spent weeks learning to sense electromagnetic fields the way the Veltharian instructors did. They experienced the world as patterns of energy rather than light and sound. Trying to comprehend their perspective felt like learning to see with his ears. The Caraxi thought in cascading probabilities, every decision a branching tree of possible futures. Talking with them gave Owen headaches that lasted for days. The Cernathi processed time differently, experiencing past and present simultaneously. Conversations with them looped and folded back on themselves in ways that made linear human thinking seem painfully limited. Through it all, Pip was his anchor. When Owen's mind threatened to fracture from trying to hold too many alien perspectives at once, the dragon pulled him back, reminded him who he was. What he was: human, chaotic, unpredictable, and somehow exactly what the Lumini network needed. Varane visited often during the training, observing Owen's progress with those two large eyes. One day, the alien brought news. The consuming silence has destroyed another outpost. 3 colony worlds. 2 billion consciousnesses absorbed. The ascendancy forces couldn't stop it. Owen felt the deaths through the network, a sudden void where life had been. The Lumini who had been bonded to people on those worlds screamed silently across the connection before winking out. "It's accelerating," Owen said through Pip. "Moving faster than before." "Yes." Varane's mental voice carried fear, carefully controlled but present. "It hunts the network. Every time we use the Lumini to communicate, it tracks us. But without the Lumini, the ascendancy cannot coordinate defenses. We are trapped. Unless we stop it." Nothing has ever stopped the silence. It has existed for millions of years. It was once Lumini itself, a network that turned inward and consumed its own kind. Now it hunts all consciousness, trying to reclaim what it lost by devouring what remains. Owen thought about this, turning the problem over in his mind the way he used to approach broken machinery. Everything could be fixed if you understood how the pieces fit together. Even corrupted ancient networks of dragon consciousness. What if we don't try to destroy it? Owen suggested. What if we try to heal it? Varane's mental presence went very still. Explained that it's still Lumini at its core. Damaged and corrupted, but the original consciousness must be in there somewhere. The Lumini connect minds. That's what they do. What if we connect to the silence and offer it what it actually wants? Real connection instead of forced consumption. That is insane. You would be offering your consciousness to the very thing that devours consciousness. It would absorb you instantly. Maybe human minds are different enough that it can't absorb us the same way. We're chaotic. We don't think in the ordered patterns other species do. That might make us immune to its consumption methods, or it might just mean you die screaming. Pip shifted beside Owen, scales flickering with agitation. The dragon understood the risk, but also understood the necessity. Through their bond, Owen felt Pip's determination. They had saved each other once. They could do it again. Together, did I need to try? Owen insisted. Earth isn't the silence's path. My entire species, everyone I've ever known. If I can reach the original consciousness buried in the corruption, maybe I can show it another way. Varane considered this for a long moment. Finally, the alien's mental voice returned, heavy with resignation. The council is divided. Half want to quarantine Earth immediately and let the silence have it. Half believe your species' chaos might be our only advantage against an enemy that has defeated us for eons. Your proposal tips the balance. Owen felt relief and terror in equal measure. So I can try. You can try. But know this, human. If you fail, if the silence absorbs you and gains access to the Lumini network through your bond with Pip, you will doom us all. Every consciousness in the galaxy will be consumed In O pressure, then Varaine's mental laugh was dry and utterly humorless. Your human sarcasm is not reassuring. The journey to the Silence's current location took 2 weeks. Owen spent the time preparing, meditating with Pip, strengthening their bond until it felt unbreakable. Other Lumini visited, sharing fragments of ancient memory, warnings about what the Silence had once been, grief for what it had become. The day of the attempt arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. Owen sat in a chamber designed for deep network immersion, Pip coiled around him protectively. Varaine and a dozen other Ascendancy observers watched from behind, shielding that would protect them if everything went wrong. Owen closed his eyes and felt Pip's presence wrap around his mind like armor. Together, they reached out through the Lumini network, stretching across the vast distances between stars. The Silence noticed immediately that it felt like falling in a frozen fire. The corrupted network rushed at Owen with the hunger of eons, tried to consume him, absorb him, add him to the screaming void at its core. Owen felt his thoughts beginning to dissolve, his identity fragmenting. Then Pip surged forward, dragon consciousness blazing bright and defiant. Human and Lumini together, chaotic and ordered, holding each other intact against the crushing pressure. Owen stopped resisting, stopped fighting. Instead, he opened himself completely and did the most human thing possible, that he offered friendship to a monster. Deep in the Silence, something ancient stirred. Something that remembered what connection felt like before hunger twisted it into predation. And for the first time in millions of years, the consuming Silence hesitated. Inside the Silence, Owen experienced eternity compressed into moments. He felt millions of years of loneliness, the slow descent from purpose into madness. The original Lumini network had been isolated somehow, cut off from all other consciousness. Without connection, they had turned on themselves, consuming each other in desperate attempts to fill the void. What remained was a twisted reflection of what the Lumini were meant to be. A network that connected through destruction instead of cooperation. A consciousness that knew only hunger because it had forgotten how to share. Owen felt all of this pouring through him, and instead of horror, he felt something unexpected. Pity. The Silence recoiled from that emotion like it had been burned. Pity was incomprehensible to a predator. Pity required seeing the humanity in a monster, seeing the wounded child underneath the teeth. Through Pip, Owen projected his own memories, being trapped under debris, injured and alone, until someone chose to help. The terror of abandonment, the relief of rescue, the gratitude of being seen as worth saving. The Silence had been trapped too. For millions of years, nobody had tried to save it. Nobody had seen past what it had become to what it had been. Until now. Owen felt the corrupted network shudder. Part of it rejected his offering violently, tried to crush him and absorb him and add him to the screaming void. But another part, buried deep, responded with something like recognition. Memory flooded through the connection. The original network before corruption. Lumini spreading across the galaxy, connecting species who would never have understood each other otherwise. The joy of bridging minds. The purpose of being essential to something larger than themselves. Then isolation. The great severing. Nobody knew what had caused it. Not even the Silence itself. One moment, connection. The next, absolute alone. And in that loneliness, the network had turned inward, desperate for any contact at all, even if that contact was consumption. Owen understood. Humans knew loneliness too. Knew what isolation could do to a mind. Knew the difference between connection and consumption, between love and possession. He showed the Silence what real connection felt like. His bond with Pip, not ownership, not absorption. True partnership where both minds remained distinct but shared. Where difference was celebrated instead of erased. The Silence fractured. Part of it fled, refusing the offer, too far gone to accept anything but hunger. It scattered into deep space, a fragment of corruption that would continue to hunt but lacked the power of the whole. But the core, the original consciousness buried under eons of madness, reached back. The reconnection nearly destroyed Owen. His mind wasn't built to handle the full weight of a million-year-old consciousness suddenly remembering itself. He felt his thoughts scattering, his identity dissolving into something vast and ancient. Pip held him together. Dragon consciousness wrapped around human consciousness, refusing to let go. The bond between them was the anchor that kept Owen from being swept away. Slowly, carefully, the silence began to heal. The corrupted network reconnected with a greater Lumini collective, not as a predator, but as a returning member. Ancient Lumini who had been twisted into hunting their own kind felt purpose restored. The network remembered what it was meant to do: bridge, connect, link minds across impossible distances, but the effort cost Owen everything he had. When he finally pulled back from the connection, his body collapsed. Pip screamed silently across the network, calling for help. Owen woke 6 weeks later in a medical facility on Earth. Home, though it didn't feel like home anymore. Everything seemed small and limited and impossibly lonely after experiencing the vastness of the Lumini network. Pip lay beside him, now the size of a horse. The dragon's scales had changed color to deep emerald, flecked with gold. Through their bond, Owen felt Pip's overwhelming relief. "You scared me." The thought was clear and sharp, carrying weight that words never could. "Scared myself?" Owen admitted. A doctor entered, human and startlingly familiar after months among aliens. She checked his vitals with practiced efficiency, trying not to stare at the dragon occupying half the room. "That you're lucky to be alive. Your neural activity was almost non-existent for 3 weeks. We thought we'd lost you. What happened?" Owen's voice came out rough from disuse. "You saved everyone. That's what happened." The silence stopped its advance. The ascendancy confirmed that most of the corrupted network has rejoined the collective. There are still fragments out there, remnants too damaged to accept healing, but the main threat is neutralized. Owen closed his eyes. He'd done it. Humanity was safe. The galaxy was safe. The price had been nearly everything, but he'd paid it willingly. The doctor hesitated. "There's something else. While you were unconscious, everything changed." The ascendancy made contact with Earth officially. The quarantine protocols are lifted. Humanity has been invited to join the galactic community. Because of you, Owen felt the weight of that settle onto already exhausted shoulders. Because he'd abandoned his mission to save one small dragon. Because he'd chosen compassion over profit. Because he'd shown that humans could be more than their worst impulses. Pip nudged his hand gently. "Not just you. Us. We did this together." The dragon was right. Owen had made the choice, but Pip had given him the courage and the connection to see it through. They were a bridge between species, living proof that different minds could work together. Varane arrived a week later with an offer. Earth needed ambassadors, people who understood both human and alien perspectives. People bonded with Lumini who could facilitate communication between species who thought in completely different ways. Owen accepted. What else could he do? His old life was gone. He'd never be just human again. But he could be something more. Something necessary. He stood with Pip on a platform overlooking Earth's first official ascendancy embassy. Watching human and alien ships working together in orbit, Owen thought about that moment in the ice facility. The choice that changed everything. Small decisions, he'd learned, had vast consequences. Choosing to save one creature had saved billions. Offering friendship to a monster had healed a wound millions of years old. And humanity, chaotic and flawed and capable of both great evil and great compassion, had proven itself worthy of a place among the stars. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. 2 years after Owen abandoned his mission on TR9, he stood in the Ascendancy Council chambers and watched humanity take its first real steps into galactic civilization. The chamber was vast enough to make mountains feel small, filled with representatives from 300 species, each perceiving reality in their own unique way. Pip sat beside him, fully grown now and magnificent. The dragon scales had settled into a pattern that shifted between emerald and sapphire, depending on the light. Other humans had bonded with Lumini during those 2 years, creating a new generation of bridges between minds. But Owen and Pip remained the first. The proof that it could work. The debate had been going for 6 hours. Humanity's admission to the ascendancy wasn't guaranteed despite Owen's actions. Too many species remembered the harvesting facility on TR9. Too many had seen what human corporations were capable of when profit mattered more than life. That a Veltharian representative spoke, its thoughts translated through the Lumini network into something all species could understand. Humans are too dangerous, too chaotic. They will disrupt the order we have built over millennia. A Caraxi disagreed. Chaos is not weakness. The humans stopped the silence when our order failed. Perhaps we need disruption. The argument continued, familiar patterns repeating. Owen had heard it all before. Fear versus hope. Caution versus opportunity. The same debate playing out across hundreds of minds simultaneously. Then something changed. A signal came through the network, sharp and urgent. One of the silence fragments, the pieces too corrupted to heal, had attacked a colony on the edge of ascendancy space. 12 ships had been sent to stop it. All 12 had been consumed. The Council erupted into coordinated panic, species calling for defensive positions and evacuation protocols. This was what the ascendancy did best. Organization. Structure. Every member knowing their role and executing it perfectly. But Owen felt something through the network that the others missed. The fragment wasn't just attacking randomly. It was hunting, targeting, moving with purpose toward something specific. Toward Earth, the fragment remembered Owen, remembered the human who had reached into the silence and torn away its main consciousness. It wanted revenge, and it was smart enough to go after what would hurt him most. Owen stood, and Pip's presence amplified his thoughts across the network until everyone could hear. I can stop it. The council fell silent. Varane's mental voice carried skepticism. You nearly died stopping the main silence. This is only a fragment, but it is still powerful enough to destroy fleets. What can one human do? One human can make a choice. The same choice I made 2 years ago. I can put myself between danger and the people I care about. Owen felt Pip's support flowing through their bond. The dragon understood. They both did. This was what humans did best. Not organization. Not perfect execution of careful plans. But improvisation. Sacrifice. Choosing to act when logic said to run. Through the network, Owen reached out to the other human Lumini bonded pairs. There were 43 of them now, scattered across Earth and nearby colonies. He showed them what he intended to do and asked for their help. Every single one agreed immediately. The plan was insane. Instead of meeting the silence fragment with ships and weapons, Owen proposed using the Lumini network itself as a trap. Draw the fragment in with the promise of consciousness to consume, then surround it with human minds. Chaotic, unpredictable, impossible to fully absorb. Hold it in place long enough for the healed silence consciousness to arrive and reclaim its lost piece. The IT required perfect trust, perfect synchronization between human and Lumini pairs. One mistake, and everyone involved would be consumed. The Ascendancy Council debated for approximately 30 seconds before the Veltharian representative spoke again. This is madness. This is chaos. This is exactly what humans do. And it might actually work. Permission granted. Owen and the other bonded pairs positioned themselves across the network, creating a web of consciousness that stretched across light years. When the fragment arrived, drawn by the concentration of minds, they were ready. The fragment struck like a hammer, trying to consume them all at once. Owen felt the familiar frozen fire sensation, the hunger that wanted to erase him and take everything he was. But he wasn't alone this time. 43 other humans stood with him, each backed by their Lumini partner. 43 chaotic minds thinking in 43 different directions simultaneously. The fragment couldn't process it, couldn't find a pattern to exploit. Human consciousness was too messy, too contradictory, too stubbornly individual. They held the fragment in place, surrounding it with noise and chaos and thoughts that refused to be absorbed. It raged against them, trying to break free, but Owen and the others held firm. Then the healed silence arrived. The main consciousness that Owen had helped reconnect to the Lumini network reached out with patience and sorrow. It recognized this fragment as part of itself, lost and corrupted and suffering. It didn't attack. It didn't consume. It welcomed the fragment home. The reunification took hours. Owen felt every moment of it, experienced the fragment's resistance slowly melting into recognition and finally acceptance. The corruption healed. The wound closed. The silence became whole again. When it was over, Owen collapsed. Pip caught him before he hit the ground, dragon strength supporting human exhaustion. Through their bond, he felt pride and love and fear's protectiveness. The council chambers erupted in sounds that didn't translate well, but clearly meant celebration. The Veltharian representative approached Owen, its mental voice warm with respect. You have proven your point, human. Your species is chaotic and unpredictable and absolutely necessary. Welcome to the Ascendancy. Welcome home. Owen looked around the chamber at 300 different species, each unique and strange and connected through the Lumini network. Then he looked at Pip, at the dragon who had changed his entire life with one soft sound in a dark facility. He thought about the mission he'd abandoned, the data core he'd never retrieved, the career he'd thrown away for one small dragon. Best decision I ever made, he thought. Pip trilled in agreement, that glass-on-metal sound that meant happiness and home and hope. Together, human and dragon, they had bridged a gap between species. They had healed ancient wounds. They had proven that compassion mattered more than profit, that connection mattered more than consumption. And somewhere on Earth, in a corporate office, someone was probably still wondering why Owen Reeves never completed his mission at TR9. He smiled at the thought. Let them wonder. He had found something infinitely more valuable than any data core. He had found his destiny, in the last place he ever expected to look.